Hello and welcome to this talk on micro-volunteering. My name is Dr. Susan O'Connor and I'm the Director of the Scottish Civic Trust. And today I'm just going to give you a brief run through micro-volunteering, what it is and how it works and how it might be useful for your organisation. So without further ado, let's switch over to the presentation. So micro-volunteering heritage. Is it the sustainable future of volunteering, or is it not worthwhile at all? Let's have a little look and see and have a think about it. First of all, micro-volunteering. Well, it's bite-sized volunteering with no commitment to repeat and with minimum formality, involving short and specific actions that are quick to start and quick to complete as well. That's the accepted definition of micro-volunteering. And I would say that the main difference between micro-volunteering and traditional volunteering is the level of responsibility and the volunteer manager. So all the usual caretaking roles that the volunteer manager would take to make sure that the volunteer is having a good experience and is performing as expected go out the window with micro-volunteering, and it's much more transactional arrangement between volunteer and volunteer manager. The key attributes of micro-volunteering are the following: duration. It's usually small parcels of time between 10 and 30 minutes most commonly, and very rarely for a full day's commitment. That would be more in the role of a traditional volunteering opportunity. Access, it's very easy to get started and it's very easy to do. So if you can explain the job in 3 sentences or less, you're probably on the right track. And similarly speaking, it's very quick to get started and can be done straight away. The travel time is very short, by which I mean either the physical travel time to the destination for the volunteering, or the travel time in terms of the clicks that you have to go through to reach the point where you actually start the job are very, very quick and brief. And indeed, the comprehension required to understand the task should be as close as possible to non-existent. It's very convenient for the volunteer because they're in complete control of when and where they do it. So they should be able to do it while they're waiting for their takeaway to arrive, on the bus, on the way to or from work, perhaps, waiting for somebody else to pick up their child, all of those kind of things. Whatever suits them is the key attribute. So if they're somebody who likes to work in the middle of the night, there should be micro-volunteering opportunities ready, willing, and able for them to take part in them at that point of the day. The level of formality is very different, and I think that's a key element for volunteer managers to understand. There's usually no formal agreement between the volunteer body and the volunteer that work is going to be carried out. And the frequency and the flexibility of the task is also key as well. So each task should be a complete unit in its own right, and it shouldn't require the volunteer to return to it for its completion at any later date. The focus is very much on tasks rather than roles, so that what you're asking the person to do is specifically related to tasks to be completed, rather than looking after a whole range of different tasks within a parcel of a project. And the location as well can be either online or offline, though in reality most of the tasks are likely to be online. So what is micro-volunteering good for? Well, very good for sustainable volunteering, because most of the tasks that will be suitable for micro-volunteering opportunities are either hyper-local or they're digital tasks. So where they are hyper-local tasks, it's because they're opportunities that work best in localities. So there's a sense of creating a more positive image of the local area and strengthening the community. So it can be things like pulling weeds out of the wall of a nearby church, or taking photographs of problems with buildings and sending them to the building's owner. All of these kinds of things count as micro-volunteering opportunities. So it's very, very good for that kind of thing, because they're specifically related to community benefits that are visible to all. It's also very suitable in terms of digital opportunities for very remote locations where traditional volunteering is limited because of the travel distance involved to get to sites. So if you can do online opportunities relating to sites that are quite remote, then it does get people engaged in a way that wouldn't be possible otherwise. And that's very good in terms of their sustainable output, but also very good for well-being for people who live in remote locations to feel like they're engaged and involved with a wider community. It's great for big non-taxing tasks. So simple tasks that are not essential to the running of the organization, that are things that will really help it in the long term to get achieved. And it's really good for reaching a wide variety of people, people who are geographically remote, people with access issues, young people, because the focus is on the task rather than the organization that's delivering it. So there's no potential for a sense of alienation because a particular organization is asking for it. It's simply, do you have the skill set to complete this work? If you do, not good for? Well, to be fair, quite a lot. It's not good for opportunities where personal care is a factor or where sustained interpersonal relationships are required for a good result. It's not good for organizations who are already struggling to manage their volunteers, because it requires substantial management and a different skill set to what's traditionally used for the skills for traditional volunteering programs. It's not good for sensitive high-risk tasks where there's an element of trust has to be built into the volunteer completing the task, because it's so anonymous. And it's not good for complex tasks, so tasks where there is a need for questioning and for a deeper understanding before being able to complete the task successfully. And also any task where there's a high level of perfectionism required and there's a lot riding on that perfectionism is not good for it, because there's a much lower level of supervision of the standards being achieved by our volunteers. So there can be kind of a bumpy ride in terms of the quality achieved overall. So if you've had to think about all of that and you'd still like to pursue micro-volunteering, here's how to pitch it internally. Be really clear about where micro-volunteering opportunities will fit into the overall picture of your organisation, because it's not a replacement, as I've been saying, for traditional volunteering, but it is something to add into that palette. And consider the formality balance carefully and be prepared for a complete rethink about how you manage your volunteers. So all of the induction, safeguarding and sort of supervision policies that you have in place for traditional volunteering are not appropriate for micro-volunteering opportunities. And as a volunteer manager, you need to be able to get beyond that expectation that that level of paperwork is necessary for a successful volunteering program. And also when pitching it, think about those projects that have been on the back for a few years, because no one says we could possibly transcribe that enormous tome of handwritten notes by so-and-so. Well, this is your golden opportunity to do it. And indeed, people are doing that all over the globe now. So that's the way to pitch it. If you want to get a really boring task completed, but it's very, very long, this is the way to do it. Put it into little bite-sized chunks and just think about how that can benefit your organization and how you'd never normally get anybody to complete that task. So if you decide you've successfully pitched it internally and now you're considering how you're going to pitch it externally, this is sort of the framework within which to build your advertisement for the volunteering opportunity. Explain what needs to be done and how long it might take in 3 sentences or less if you can. Use clear, informal language. Include a pitch on where this task fits into the greater good if you can. Don't be afraid to be quite transactional in your approach. So can you offer a reward, for example, a key ring or free access or a free coffee at the cafe or something like that? You can frame it as a well-being exercise. So take 10 minutes to feel good all day long, or brand it as a sort of mindfulness exercise and explain that it's a straightforward but meaningful piece of work that can be carried out. If you have to ask for monitoring data, try and limit it to just one piece on what you most need to know. Remembering, of course, that you are asking for people to give you a 10-minute commitment in return for which they will get to feel good about themselves. So that doesn't really give you the opportunity to ask for much more than one piece at most of monitoring data, and only if you really feel you have to do that. And you should be, if it's an online opportunity, you should be able to pull some data analytics anyway to explain exactly who it is, who's accessing your opportunities. So bearing that in mind, here are some sample texts. There on the right-hand side, you'll see there's an actual real-life example of a micro-volunteering opportunity taken from the American Science Universe. Of a transcription exercise, and here's my own example using the Scottish example on the left-hand side. Let's to correct our best guess at reading articles from the 1920s. 5 Cultural Trust is creating a fully accessible newspaper archive, and we need your help to do it. Correct 5 of our text sections for free access to our new exhibition. So that's just one way of considering how you might phrase it. You can go for a more straightforward one there on the right-hand side. You can see they're pushing forward with the idea of this being a very significant set of notebooks. And that's a different approach again. You need to decide what your best selling point is. If you have a really significant, if you have a known name who needs some research, then that's possibly the best way to go forward. Otherwise, it's about other aspects that you can draw on to make your opportunity really attractive to people. So just some reflections, more broadly speaking, on the idea of micro-volunteering. It's part of a a cultural shift away from physical participation as being the greatest marker of value within heritage and engagement. Our entire Doors Open Day program this last year was in fact digital, and 75% of our audience was new, which really reflects the capacity of digital engagement to draw in new audiences into heritage, which is just so important for the sector. But it does start to beg the question about the relative importance of 2D and 3D experiences, and whether we can view people viewing things only as in 2D as having the same qualities of experience as a in real life experience. And I think that's a more broad question to ask yourself about how that works for you. I think it's probably best suited for the nice to have rather than the essential tasks. And it should fit within a palette of opportunities rather than a standalone opportunity. But if you really have a need as an organisation to start producing volunteering opportunities that take cognizance of the climate crisis, and if you want to pass out your palette of opportunities that are opportunities from very resource heavy traditional ones with something more light touch, then it's absolutely ideal for you. So just finally, some micro volunteering tasks that you could consider: creating infographics from a list of data provided, tagging building images, for example, or object images, transcribing text from scanned images, checking OCR reading of scanned images, tracing a building image or an object image to create a colouring in drawing to be printed off and used in real life, or potentially, this is a slightly longer one, creating a simple knitting pattern for a building that can also be shared online as well. Offline examples might be weeding beds on the way to the bus stop, or taking record photographs of sites in your area for the Buildings at Risk Register. There are a whole range of other things that will spring to mind, but those are just some really straightforward ones to get the cogs turning, so to speak. So I hope that's been helpful for you. If you'd like some further reading, here are some great resources, so do feel free to access those. And I hope you've enjoyed today's talk. Thank you very much for your participation today.